Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to my weekly live Q&A episode number 52. My name is Danny Segura. I am a mixed martial arts reporter for MMAJunkie.com. Like I said, this is my weekly live Q&A where I answer all your questions regarding the combat sports world and beyond. So, lots to talk about, like always, but I think this week, obviously coming off a UFC pay-per-view, plus, we got Bellator and UFC again this weekend. We got a lot on our plate, and there's been a lot of news as well. So, big fight that we had on Saturday night with UFC 262. One of the greatest cards. I mean, this year every single pay per view so far has been pretty great. I can't think of a single pay per view that sucked so far. Hopefully, knock on wood, that doesn't change. But yeah, the fights have been killing it. And yeah, that UFC 262 pay per view was absolutely brilliant. So a lot to talk about from there. We got a lot of questions from that, and obviously, as you said, as we look ahead into the weekend, plenty of stuff to talk about. Not the biggest fight night. I think it's actually not the greatest, but there are some important fights on there, and it should be all right. It should be all right. At least that main event should get you interested. Main and co-main event should get you interested enough on watching that fight night. And actually, Chris Bennett is fighting Ben Rothwell. For those that don't know, Chris Bennett, I think is Cuddly Bear. His name is his nickname. A brilliant fighter. So definitely looking forward to his debut. I haven't seen the UFC heavyweight division have a colorful personality like he has. You can probably find similar personalities in other divisions, but I don't know if UFC heavyweight division we've seen anything like that. So for those that don't know who he is, that's definitely a good reason to tune in on Saturday. So a lot to talk about here. All right, so let's get into it. Let's get into the Twitter questions, and then I'll move over to the YouTube live chat and tackle those questions there. So if you didn't have a chance to ask via Twitter, throw stuff on the YouTube live chat, and I'll get to it in a few minutes. Sounds good? Like always, subscribe, like this video. You know the deal. Let's see here. All right. First question, you guys already know. Biggest hater on this program. It's by 8 Paths of Wokeness. Whoop. And he wants to know, I think due to the timeline and events, Dana is really going to try and squeeze in Justin to fight Charles and then set up a November/December title fight with the winner of Conor versus Dustin. You think Justin gets a title fight or Chandler? That's a good question. I think it's definitely possible. I do think that the winner of Poirier McGregor is going to be the next title challenger. I think that's the most likely scenario here. However, if Conor wins, we know that he likes to take his time on things, and we also know that whenever he's involved in a fight, there needs to be a proper build-up. They can't just book him, a month in advance and be like, "Hey, everybody, Conor McGregor's fighting. Get your pay-per-view." Usually, his fights require a decent build-up, right? At least a couple months in order to promote the thing properly, since he's such a big draw. So I don't know if he's gonna want a quick turnaround and fight Charles Oliveira, keeping in mind that he just fought. So basically, he'd be like a month and a half, almost 2 months, really, of already sitting on the sidelines after becoming champion. So I can see that scenario where Charles Oliveira wants to get a fight in, so they just bring the next person in line. And I know Justin Gage is coming off a loss, but that is to Khabib Nurmagomedov, which automatically by default you should take an L anytime you sign the contract to fight him. So maybe they can look past that, and then look, it's still a big, fun, exciting fight, so they can definitely book it. So I see where you're coming from here, but I think ultimately they're gonna just get the winner of Conor and Poirier in there, because so many things can happen in the interim, and that is a big fight, especially anytime you can get Conor to fight for a title. Of course, if he beats Dustin, that's big money. So I think they'll stay away from putting another person in that equation that's not Dustin or Conor. So Charles Oliveira is probably gonna have to wait a bit for his first title defense. That's my guess. So we'll see a Charles Oliveira title defense sometime like later this year, like closer to the end. I think that's what's gonna happen. All right. Darby Crash wants to know, Tony has lost 3 straight fights. It's obvious he's not a top lightweight anymore. Knowing this, what lower ranked fighter would you match him up with to possibly get him a win? So at this point, I think it'd be nice to see Tony Ferguson win. I think any hardcore fan, any fan that's really been tuning in to the UFC's lightweight division for the past, 8 years, I think everybody has respect for Tony Ferguson, right? Um, so I don't necessarily, although it'd be nice to see him get a victory. I don't necessarily think that's what's at play here. I think at this point, you're right. I think Tony Ferguson is no longer a top 5 lightweight. He's no longer an elite lightweight. I think this fight with Dariush was his chance to sort of pop a Yui, pull a U-turn, and kind of start the rise back up, and kind of remind everybody like, hey, look, the previous fights where I lost to the current champion, right, Charles Oliveira, and prior to that, I fought Gaethje while I was training for one of the best grapplers of all time, and all of a sudden they put one of the most dangerous strikers of all time. So I think there could have been a good chance to turn that narrative around. But seeing what Dariush did to him, I think it's safe to assume that his days as a top 5 lightweight are over. At 37 years old, with the amount of damage and mileage he has on his body, like, I really don't think it is possible for him to be at that level. We'll see. Stranger things have happened, but I think we're done. We're done seeing Ferguson as a top lightweight. So at this point, 37, obviously he's a savage. He's gonna want to continue fighting. Certainly he doesn't have a lot of time left in him, but knowing the type of person that he is, he definitely wants to continue on fighting. So at this point, look, I think just have fun fights with him. I think it was pretty clear by the UFC 262 build-up and even event itself. I think the most popular fighter there was Tony Ferguson. I think even though there was a belt on the line, even though Chandler, is coming out from Bellator and he has all this hype, Charles Oliveira on a crazy win streak, I still think the most popular fighter there and the most loved fighter there was Tony Ferguson. I think it was pretty clear by the crowd reaction. I think online I saw a lot of great things about it too. So at this point, like, just have fun with the guy. I mean, just put him in fights that he may or may not win, but are certainly favorable, and not only that, but are fun fights. Kind of like the Legends division. He kind of just entered that. Before he had the age to qualify to the Legends division, and certainly the mileage, but he was still running. He was still running at a good level, enough to be a title contender. But I think that's not the case anymore. So put him up against the Cowboy Cerrone. Why not? He's in a pretty bad losing streak, right? Their fight ended fairly controversial. It was a good bout, and then Cowboy had that infamous moment where he like blew out his nose and he had a broken nose, right? And his sort of eye socket blew up and he couldn't see, and then the referee called the fight, or the doctor. So put him up against him. Why not? That'd be a fun fight between two legends. A Jim Miller would be fun as well. Fighters of that caliber. Look, depending on what happens with Nate Diaz and Leon Edwards, a fight with Nate Diaz at 170 or 165, if you want to do a catch weight, that'd be fun as well. Why not? At this point, he's a bit of a, I don't want to say celebrity fighter, because it's not like he's just celebrity and that's how he made his name in the sport. He was certainly somebody that, obviously a former UFC interim champion, but at this point, just have fun and have him a proper send-off. He may win some of those, he may lose them, you don't know, but at least you're putting him in competitive bouts, right? I think anybody in the top 5 is not going to be competitive against Tony Ferguson. I just don't see how Tony Ferguson fares right now with the top 5 lightweight, given everything that we've seen. So for me, continue fighting. He certainly still has skills to be in the rankings. I don't think he's fallen off enough where he's out of the top 15. I think that's kind of crazy. I think he'll beat a lot of top 15 guys. But yeah, just put him up against legends and have some fun with the bouts. Let me pull up the UFC rankings here real quick. Yeah, I wouldn't even, for example, Jim Miller's not even in the rankings. I wouldn't mind seeing that fight. Cowboy Cerrone's not in the lightweight rankings. I wouldn't mind seeing that fight. Bobby Green's not in the rankings. I wouldn't mind at all seeing a Bobby Green Tony Ferguson fight. That'd actually be kind of fun because Bobby Green would keep that thing standing. Dude, if Pettis would still be around, that'd be another perfect fight. Just have those type of matchups. You guys can kind of get a good grip of the type of fights I want to see with Tony Ferguson. And look, that's not to say that I don't want to like completely shut down Tony Ferguson's career and say, look, he's done and that's it. We're done here, and sort of wrap up shop here. No, kind of the best example is when the UFC kind of started matchmaking Matt Hughes after his second loss to George St. Pierre. They gave him Matt Serra, another veteran. They gave him Renzo Gracie. They gave him Royce Gracie, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe that was prior to the first loss to St. Pierre, not the second. And they kind of just started giving Ricardo Almeida. They just kind of started giving him these type of fights, and they were fun fights, and everybody was excited to see Matt Hughes, get back out there, and not only that, but win. It was fun. And then it got to a point where he was like on a 4-fight win streak, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute. Now, he's been looking good in his last few fights. All right, let's give him, I think it was Josh Koscheck. And Josh Koscheck beat him up. And then that's when you go, yep, we were right. But, like, look, we had some fun. And he did look a little bit promising at some point. So at that point, then we sort of raised the stakes. So, look, if Tony Ferguson is like 38, 39, and he's all of a sudden tearing people to shreds, and he looks like he's got a second win to his career, would I be opposed to see him against a ranked fighter? Maybe not. But at this point in time, I don't think that's the business right now. All right. Brandon Music. And he wants to know, Tony did a lot better moving his head this fight than last two. Did his head movement make him out of position in defending takedown attempts? I think it always has. It's not only to this fight. I think he stands very, very tall. He rarely kind of lowers his stance. He doesn't have a great base and balance. You see it all the time. You saw it in previous fights where he would swing and be out of balance and then kind of turn that into some spinning back fist or elbow, or he would do like a roll on the ground. He's always fought that way, and I think that's one of the reasons why he did so well, because he's so unorthodox. So obviously it throws a lot of people off. But he is susceptible to the takedowns, and he's not only susceptible now, as we saw against Dariush and Charles Oliveira, but he's been taken down many times in his career as well. I think probably most recent that comes to mind is Kevin Lee, right? Like a clear fight where he got out wrestled. But that was never his issue. Like, you never really thought of Tony Ferguson as having like the best takedown defense, and that's not the reason why we all got excited for a Khabib fight. We did not get excited for a Khabib fight because Tony Ferguson had amazing takedown defense. No, quite the opposite. He's always had poor takedown defense, or maybe not poor, but certainly not like a super high level. Like he gets taken down, right? But the reason why we got excited for a potential Khabib matchup is what he could do on the ground. Historically, and I've been covering this sport professionally for over 5 years now, and going to 6, and I've been a fan, watching and tuning in very closely, years before that. And I might be wrong here. Somebody correct me, but I think Tony Ferguson might be the most dangerous person historically, at least in his prime, off his back. And I'm not just counting submission threats. Obviously, if you get in Damian Maia's guard, there's a problem there, right? And many others. But as far as just a guy that you want to avoid being on top of, Tony Ferguson has to be at the top of the list. I mean, what he was able to do with his elbows to Kevin Lee, just pretty much just break fighters while they're on top. Like, that's just unheard of. So it was never really about, Tony Ferguson might stop Khabib's takedowns. No, it was, okay, we know Khabib only has one thing in his, one weapon in his arsenal. That's takedowns. All right, we'll see how he deals with elbows. And can he submit Tony? Because Tony is unsubmittable, even past his prime. Look at what Beneil Dariush, a jiu-jitsu black belt, was unable to do, even with a heel hook completely locked. Look at what Charles Oliveira, another jiu-jitsu black belt, was unable to do, even with an armbar locked. So it was like, Khabib's going to have a tough time submitting this guy. So go ahead, take him down, and we'll see how his face, his head looks while taking elbows over the course of 5 rounds. And every time the fight gets reset on the feet in between rounds, he's still a danger to anybody, obviously, given his unorthodox striking, and he's got power and can cut fighters, right? And that's one thing as well. Like, we've never seen Khabib face that kind of adversity, like get cut, right? Fight through that, because that's definitely something when you start seeing your own blood, and it's it changes the fight, you know, once you start getting pieced up, and that's something Khabib has never dealt with. I'm not saying he'd be bad at dealing with it. We just don't know, which would make the Ferguson bout very appealing. So anyways, I know I'm kind of going on a rant here, but to answer your question, his movement, yes, did make him out of position on defending takedowns, but that's always been the case throughout his entire career. And I just want to address this because I got a little back and forth with Luke Thomas on Twitter on Saturday night for UFC 262. By the way, all love, Luke is my homie. But you know, we're not always gonna agree on stuff. And I did see him put out something like, "Hey, I don't know how I feel about the Khabib fight anymore. Watching him get basically out wrestled, you know, in these last 2 fights in very dominant decisions, really clean 30-27s. He got out wrestled over the course of 6 rounds. And I think that was a bit unfair, you know, and I kind of gave him this example. I was like, you know, we're not going to look at BJ Spenn's fight against Dennis Seaver. He was unable to outstrike an old, aging Dennis Seaver, who's not even in the rankings. And we're not going to judge him and be like, well, how would he do against maybe Charles Oliveira today? Like, let's not forget, at one point before we had washed BJ was on the top of the world. He had a world championship at 170 pounds and at 155. You know what I'm saying? So we're clearly dealing with 2 different Tonys. Is the decline the same as BJ Penn's? No, clearly not. As he said, and as I stated, I still think Tony Ferguson is a ranked top 15 fighter today, skill-wise. But certainly he's not the guy that he used to be, and that's a lot of damage that he's taken. Plus, he's 37 at 155 pounds. That's a tough position to be in. So I'm not here to say that, you know, absolutely Tony Ferguson would have beat Khabib Nurmagomedov in a fight. All I'm saying is it's unfair to judge this version and be like, see, we told you. He doesn't have what it takes to beat Khabib Nurmagomedov. Look, he just got out grappled. I think we're just dealing with 2 different Tonys right now. And the answer to that potential fight that would never happen now, unfortunately, rest in peace, is we don't know. We don't know. And I think this decline has not only been this last 2 fights. I think this Ferguson decline has been on for quite some time. It's just noticeable now. I remember watching him fight Cowboy Cerrone, and he was kind of, I would have to watch that fight again, but from what I remember, like, he was kind of getting pieced up right now. And that was his last win. And then he wins via doctor stoppage. But that one fight of the night, it was kind of even. And at that point, Cowboy in 2019 wasn't in the best patch, you know. So and that was his last victory. So I do think we've seen a bit of a decline. I think prime Tony Ferguson is when he won the interim title, 2017, when he beat Kevin Lee. That was 2 fights before the Donald Cerrone fight. So he beat Kevin Lee. He went on to fight Anthony Pettis, Cerrone, and that's when he went on the losing streak, losing to Gaethje, Oliveira, and Dariush. But 2017 Tony Ferguson, the man that won the UFC lightweight, the UFC interim lightweight title, I think that fight against Khabib would have been very, very, very competitive, and I wouldn't have been surprised if he would have defeated Khabib. I mean, just go back and look at what nightmare that man was on bottom with elbows. His rubber guard, his ability to recover guard, the angles that he was able to get. It was just brutal. And Kevin Lee is a serious wrestler. He's pretty damn good. So yeah, I think this decline's been on for a while, but I think he finally crossed a threshold in his decline where it has side effects. But I didn't think the Tony Ferguson that we saw in 2019 against Donald Cerrone was the same against Kevin Lee. I really don't. And also, I just want to say one last thing on this point, and I know ranting here, but hear me out. Um, you know, I didn't see it in full, but I saw most of Luke's takes regarding this point on Morning Combat. And he's like, well, I think, he was kind of getting away and beating everybody at a certain level. But once he crossed the upper echelon, and the grappling just got better by nature of going up in the rankings, which obviously the higher you go in the rankings, usually the higher the skill set, right? That's when we started seeing these issues. Well, man, I don't really buy that. Like, do you consider Charles Oliveira, and I'm not talking about just all around grappling, let's just focus in on wrestling. Do you consider Charles Oliveira a better wrestler than Kevin Lee? Do you consider Charles Oliveira a better wrestler than RDA? Do you consider Beneil Dariush a better wrestler than Kevin Lee? Do you consider Beneil Dariush a better wrestler than RDA? I don't think so. I think RDA and Kevin Lee out-wrestle both Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush. They might be better grapplers overall as far as, having a more complete bottom game, guards, etc., and in other, submissions and other aspects, sure. But as far as wrestling itself, which it was what we saw here in these last two losses for Ferguson, where he got out-wrestled, I think he's versed better wrestlers, if not at the bare minimum, if you want to give me some debate, the same level. Like, Kevin Lee and RDA are up there with wrestling, man, so yeah, I mean, I just think that the decline's hard. The decline's hard, and people want to compare this Tony Ferguson to Khabib, where we just witnessed the man literally leave on top as champion in one of his best performances, submitting Justin Gaethje back in October, and it's just uncomparable. It's just uncomparable. But go watch. I encourage you, go watch 2017 Tony Ferguson. Go watch that Kevin Lee fight again. That man at that point was a huge threat to Khabib, and there's no doubt about that. Again, I'm not saying he'd beat him, but you can't discard him with the version that we see now and say, well, we knew it. That fight was a bad matchup for Ferguson. No, I don't buy it. Do not buy it. All right, next question. While Dariush got a dominant win, it was boring. So he won't get a big name. Definitely not a top 5 guy. Should he fight Islam after he's done crushing that can? I guess I could see them giving him Cowboy if they see star potential in him. No way. Cowboy versus Dariush is not happening. Does Islam have a fight booked? I didn't even know he had a fight booked. Maybe I did, but I forgot. Islam Makhachev. Oh yeah, Thiago Moses. Yeah, in July, Thiago Moses. Thiago Moses is legit. He's pretty good. He ain't no Ken. You're tripping, A Paso Focus. He's a good fighter, Thiago Moses, and he's on a bit of a streak. Yeah, 3-fight winning streak. Michael Johnson, Bobby Green, and Alex Hernandez. Those are solid names. No. I think, I mean, I feel like at this point, like, yes, it was boring, the fight against Ferguson. Speaking of Dariush, it wasn't the most exciting, but I do like one of the quotes he said when I think my colleague John Morgan was the one that asked him this at the post-fight presser, but he was like, yo, can you, we're kind of expecting like a banger, obviously, Beneil Dariush track record, especially as of late, just performance of the night, bonuses left and right, crazy ass knockouts, crazy fight of the nights. Obviously, we know Tony Ferguson's track record. I don't have to go down the list here, but it was kind of like fireworks. This fight was going to be awesome. It was going to be obviously super high level, but it was going to be a crazy ass fight. That didn't end up being the case, mostly because of Dariush, right? Because of his approach. And he said, look, you cannot be a bonus fighter all the time. That's what he said. And if you want to be a champion, sometimes you got to stick to a game plan. And I think that's true, He's given us a lot of action, a lot of fun, and we cannot complain. So when he gets to the biggest fight of his career, which is a co-main event in a UFC pay-per-view, the biggest stage against the biggest opponent, Tony Ferguson, obviously a very popular fighter, I'm not going to blame him and I'm not going to trash him if he decides to take a conservative approach and a dominant approach. It's not like he was stalling or anything like that. He was certainly dominating the entire action. So look, these performances are going to happen. You cannot expect bangers every single time. And I'm not going to blame him. I'm not going to blame him, especially if he's given us crazy-ass action for over the course of the last 5 fights in this little run that he's been on. Let me quickly look at his record. Yeah, so prior to the Tony Ferguson fight, he had fight of the night. Then he had a KO spinning back fist against Scott Holtzman, which he missed weight for, so he didn't win a bonus, but that would have been knockout of the night for sure. And then prior to that, he had a performance of the night against Drakkar Klose, then another performance of the night against Frank Camacho, and then another performance of the night against Drew Dober. So look, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fights where you have incredible finishes and you win performance of the night bonuses. I'm not going to shit on you if you decide to out-wrestle Tony Ferguson here. So I still do think that his 7-fight winning streak merits a big name. I don't think they should punish him by giving him Islam. I think Islam should be fighting some other type of opponent at this point. Somebody with popularity, you know. Certainly, I think that's what he's lacking right now in his career. But that's not Dariush. Dariush is not the most popular fighter, but he's certainly one of the most skilled fighters today. And he should be in the top 5 lightweight rankings. Is he? Have they been updated? Yeah, Dariush is at number 3. So certainly. So I think Dariush ideally should fight Gaethje. I think that's the fight to make. And then that'll create a title contender after we get some resolution between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor. But Dariush is really good friends with Justin Gaethje. So I don't know. I don't think they'd be willing to fight each other. So so I say, you know, let's just wait and see. As Dariush said, let's just wait and see how Poirier and McGregor shakes out. Because if Poirier loses, you bet your ass McGregor's getting a title shot. And Poirier would still want to fight. So maybe a fight with Beneil Dariush would make sense. Dariush versus, you can't even put him against RDA. They used to be former training partners. I don't know if they'd be willing to fight each other. I also like Dariush versus Chandler. You know, if you want to get Chandler right back in the mix, especially given his age, put him in there. Why not? And I think Chandler, that's what he wants. I don't think he wants a long road and build up, an easy build up that progressively gets harder to the title because, you know, he's 34 and he needs to move now. So Dariush versus Chandler, make that happen. That's the way to go. All right. Darby Crash says Dana White says Kayla Harrison isn't ready for UFC, but Wolf with 1 fight and CM Punk with none where? He's asking. Do you agree with Dana? And why do you think he's taking this stance instead of showing interest in a potential superstar? Yes, this is one of the most stupidest things out there. I know it's tough, you know, because I've been in that position myself as a media member. So I'm not here to throw shade to anybody, but I would like to see somebody from the media that's present in those conversations. I think that was a Brett Okamoto interview that he said that for ESPN, Dana White. And again, I'm not here to shit on Brett. I've met him a few times. Great dude. It's a tough job. I mean, it really is. But I'd like to see some of the media that sometimes talks to him to, you know, fire back a little bit, you know, and you know, not in a disrespectful manner, but sort of challenge his ideas, right? Okay, like you don't think that that Kayla Harrison, who's a PFL champ, you know, 9-0, undefeated, is not ready for the UFC. Then what about, you know, fighters like CM Punk, etc., Wolf, as you mentioned? It's tough. I know fans sometimes criticize media for, hey, you didn't ask this, you're not doing your job correctly, but it really is hard. You know, I'll throw myself in the water. When I interviewed recently Ali Abdelaziz, you know, he was saying how Colby didn't deserve a title fight, and then, you know, I disagreed with that, but you know, it's not it's not the time and place for me to jump in there and be like, hey, you know, I disagree with that. No, I just ask him about it and get his opinion about it, via video, show you guys what he has to say and his thoughts. That's what the point of an interview is. But I should have fired back and be like, hey, so what would you say to those people that, they see this and they see like Colby doesn't deserve a shot, but you guys did fight Masvidal, right? And maybe Colby's not as big of a superstar as Masvidal, but certainly out of the crop that is left that you mentioned, Michael Chiesa, Vicente Luque, and all these other guys, Colby's probably the bigger name, right? Like, kind of fire back a little bit, and have him debate his point even further, right? So yeah, it's a tough job. I'm not here to say that it isn't, but I'd like to see somebody fire back a little bit at Dana when he makes those types of claims about Kayla Harrison, because I look at her and she looks more than ready to be in the UFC. I mean, she successfully made a cut to 145 pounds. I talked to her after the fact. Pretty seamless cut. Didn't affect her performance at all. She didn't feel her cardio was shot, her strength was shot, her speed was shot, nothing. And I almost feel like 145 is a better weight class for her than 155. I think she has a way bigger advantage at 145 over the girls at 155, although most of the 55ers are 45ers fighting at 55, or even sometimes 35ers, as we've seen in the PFL tournament. But look, at 145, who can stop her? I would dare to say she might even beat Cyborg. She's already there. She's already at that level. And by the end of this PFL tournament, she's going to be even past that level. So yeah, Kayla Harrison's a complete beast. And as far as like, why would Dana take this stance? So to answer your first question, I disagree with Dana. I think Kayla Harrison's ready to be in the UFC. I think she beats every single girl that the UFC has ever hired for 145 pounds. That includes Felicia Spencer. That includes Megan Anderson, with all the respect in the world. There's more, but I don't even know their names. But yeah, I think Kayla Harrison beats every single one of them. Does she beat Amanda Nunes? I don't know. Nunes is the GOAT. What do you want me to say? You know what I'm saying? But I'd like to see it. I think it'd be the biggest challenge that, aside from Cyborg, I think it's probably the biggest challenge that Nunes would ever face at 145 pounds. So I'm about it. And so yeah, I disagree with him. And what do you think? Why do you think he's taking this stance instead of showing interest in a potential superstar? A lot of it is negotiation, as well as, you don't want to gas somebody up that is not in your promotion, and promote them, right? His job's to promote his own fighters, promote his own product, promote his own fights, not others. So he's not going to sit there and be like, oh yeah, Kayla Harrison, got to check out PFL on ESPN2. Kayla Harrison's killing it. She's one of the best fighters today. Go tune in. He's not going to do that, So again, I'm not blaming Dana. It's his job, I expect that. But that ain't my job, so I can go on here and tell you these type of things. But yeah, if he signs her, that's when he would be like, this is one of the best fighters out there. She fucking killed it in PFL, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to see some of her, go to, UFC.tv and watch her fight at Invicta, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's just, that's just classic promoter stuff. Plus, I mean, if you don't want to oversell yourself. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're negotiating for money to potentially sign her, you don't want to talk all this big game and then not be able to get her, not be able to sign her. So yeah, I mean, it's expected, not only from Dana, but just I expect those type of comments from any promoter out there. And lastly, on the Kayla Harrison thing, she told me a while back that this was her last season as far as contractually. So I think she's going to wait till the season's over and then kind of see if she's going to resign with PFL or go elsewhere. But we could see a major shift at the end of 2021. And look, Kayla Harrison right now, I think she's got enough skill set to make a fight with Amanda Nunes very, very interesting. And if she's able to show new tools in this tournament, I think it'll be even more appealing. But I'm all in on Kayla Harrison fighting some big names. And look, she can even go to Bellator. Cyborg's there. I think that'd be an interesting fight as well. All right. So wait, does that do it for the Twitter questions? Oh no, it doesn't. All right. So we got one more Twitter question, and I'll hop over to the YouTube live chat. A passive wokeness again. Last one. Give us your thoughts on the new rankings of 155. Conor got moved back to top 5. Lee moved up a spot, even though he not only lost his last fight, but it was at 170. What is it? But was it not at 170? Yes. I'm pretty sure no, his last loss was against Charles Oliveira at 155. Prior to that, he had knocked out Gregor Gillespie, and prior to that, that's when he had his run at 170. So you're quite off, man. A passive wokeness, you're off. He hasn't fought at 170 in quite a while. You know what fight I'd like to see? Kevin Lee, Islam Makhachev. That's the fight. Yeah, his last loss was at against Charles Oliveira. Well, he did miss weight, so it was technically a catch weight bout at 158.5, not 170. But okay, so let's look at the rankings. All right, I have that pulled up over here. So we got champion, obviously, Mr. Charles Olives. Number 1 contender, Dustin Poirier, rightfully so. Number 2, Justin Gaethje. I could debate that because he is coming off a loss, and you guys know how I feel about fighters losing title fights and still being top contenders. But okay, skill-wise, Gaethje might be the second guy best there, not counting the champion, sure. Number 3, Beneil Dariush. That sounds about right. Number 4, Michael Chandler. That's great. I love it. See, he just fought for a title, lost, get bumped down. That's the way it should be. I'm not saying get bumped down to 15 or out of the rankings, but I think you should maybe be bumped down to 4 or 5 automatically by default if you lose in a title fight. I don't think you should lose to the champion or in a vacant title fight in this case and then still be number 1 contender. But anyways, they got it right here with Chandler. And Conor, number 5, Tony Ferguson, 6, 7, RDA, 8, Dan Hooker, 9, Paul Felder, 10, Islam Makhachev, 11, Gregor Gillespie, 12, Kevin Lee, 13, Diego Ferreira, 14, Drew Dober, 15, Thiago Moses. Bro, this shit right here might actually be the most accurate rankings I have ever read on the UFC page. This might be the most accurate UFC rankings in the history of the UFC rankings. I think so. I mean, maybe there's a time that I missed, a week I didn't read the rankings or whatever. Maybe there's a time out there, but out of everything that I've seen, this might be the most accurate list. Like, I'm pretty much okay with that list. I mean, you can maybe split some hairs here and there and get a little picky and switch some guys in places. But more or less, this is a good, accurate representation of the top contenders at 155 pounds. More or less. I think so. Sounds good to me. I don't know how you guys felt when I was reading that list, but sounds accurate to me. All right, at this point in time, I switch over to a YouTube live chat. So if you just recently tuned in and didn't get to ask questions via Twitter, please throw stuff on the YouTube live chat and I'll get to it in a matter of seconds. By the way, reminder, we got the super chat open if you want to drop some money for your boy. So I can keep building on this channel and making cool stuff. I appreciate it, but it's not necessary. I think just a subscription and a like will do the job. Always appreciate your participation, your viewership, and your love, because everyone always gives me mad love on this program. And I appreciate it because these days it's tough to find it. It's tough to find it. Tons of haters online. Let's see here. Valentina Gomez. And she asks, do you think Valerie will win her upcoming fight, and could it be a finish? So, cheap plug here. Not so cheap, but still a plug. I interviewed Valerie Loreda in Spanish over in my Spanish YouTube channel, Hablemos MMA. You can check that out. It's already uploaded. I actually uploaded last night. A nice conversation in Spanish. We talk about a lot of things. Obviously, her upcoming fight at Bellator 259 against Hannah Guy, as well as a million other things. The haters, her development in mixed martial arts, training at American Top Team, dancing, bunch of things. So check that out if you speak Spanish or want to learn some Spanish. Do you think Valerie will win her upcoming fight, and could it be a finish? Yes, I think Bellator's being very smart about the way they matchmake her. I think she's got a very good head on her shoulders. I think she's very aware of the current stage that she's at in her career, which is, she's an upcoming fighter that's 3-0 and shouldn't be fighting in former Invicta champions, former Bellator champions, fighting for the title, fighting fighters that got 20 fights of experience. No, she's 3-0, and it's not about getting easy matchups, but getting matchups that are at a par with her experience. So she's fighting a girl that's 2-1. That seems like a fair matchup to me, So I know sometimes popularity, which is a big thing in combat sports, it overshadows skill. So, because there's usually a correlation between the most skilled fighters in the world being the most popular. Because if you're skilled, you're able to achieve heights that other unskilled fighters are not able to, which put you in bigger platforms, thus boosting your fame. So, for example, Canelo, the best fighter, the best boxer today in the world, also the most popular. Why? Because he's that good. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes, in a few rare cases, popularity doesn't always match skill set. So you have some fighters become famous for other things, sort of as Conor McGregor is a former world champion, so that's not really a great example. But Valerie's a good example. She's obviously become famous and been promoted a lot, and she's become a well-known name while just being a 3-0 fighter. So sometimes I feel like maybe she's judged unfairly, and maybe people criticize some of the type of matchups. But look, this is how you would match up a fighter that's 3-0. Any fighter, Valerie, not Valerie, this you would match him up with. So I do think she wins. I don't think Bellator at this stage will put her in a fight that's too challenging to the point that we'll be questioning where she actually might not have a chance of winning, type of thing. So I think she should be able to win it from the little bit that I read and studied ahead of my interview with Valerie. Obviously, I have to look into her opponent a bit. She's 2-1. She looks tough. Apparently, she's got a really good grappling base. I think we've seen Valerie mostly against strikers, so that'd be an interesting change. I kind of love that about Bellator. Like, not just give her fights that test her, give her different looks and stuff, but that are up to par with her experience level. So I think she's getting that here. So we might get some interesting stuff from Valerie. We might be seeing some takedown defense. We might be seeing some other tools that perhaps you weren't really able to see in her last few bouts. So that's interesting. She's facing a grappler. So that's caught my eye. So I'm curious to see how she looks. But I expect her to win. She should win. And look, she's pretty good for a 3-0 fighter. She's got really good striking. She's got power in the women's divisions, which usually is not seen as often compared to the men's, especially in the lower weight classes. She fights at, 115 or 125? Yeah, 125. Yeah. So yeah, she should be able to win this fight, but should be an interesting one. Yeah, Hannah Guy 2-1, a little better than her previous opponents, than Valerie's, which is good. That means you're seeing an escalation. Grappling background. We'll see how she looks. Been fairly active. Last fought in August, so she ain't a fighter that they're bringing that's had a 2-year layoff or anything like that. Should be a good fight. And her amateur record is pretty good. So she's actually undefeated as an amateur with 5-0 record. So people don't look at the amateur record, but they are fights. So yeah, should be an interesting fight. Looking forward to that one. Best of luck to Valerie. All right. Amy Wee wants to know, who is Cowboy going to fight next? Tony Ferguson? Jim Miller? Bobby Green? Those are some names for you. I'm trying to think who else. If Matt Brown wants to still continue fighting, Matt Brown, maybe do that rematch. That was a great fight, by the way. There's names out there. Look, if Nick Diaz comes back, Nick Diaz versus Cowboy Cerrone, why not? If Nate Diaz takes a loss, Nate Diaz versus Cowboy Cerrone 2, why not? There are fights. There are fights for him. Certainly not a top 5 guy, or top 15 really in the rankings, but give him a nice little name. How fucked is Tony's knee after the Dariush fight? I have no idea. He hasn't said, but Dariush said he heard a few pops. That man knows about breaking stuff. Obviously, very strong grappling background. So if he says that knee must be busted, that knee's probably busted. And it's funny because he mentioned in the post-fight presser, Dariush did. He went up to Ferguson and he's like, yo, is your knee all right? Like, kind of like after the fact, and Ferguson's like, what? No, I don't know what you're talking about. Just kept walking around. Ferguson is just something else, man. Something else. But yeah, hopefully he's not, man. Hopefully he's not, because those knee injuries, especially because he's had previous knee injuries. I don't know if on the same knee, but you always want, you got to be a real piece of shit if you wish harm and actual health consequences to any fighter that steps in the cage. You got to be a real dirtbag to do that. So, I hope he's perfectly fine, just as good as he entered the cage. Knock on wood. But yeah, that knee looked compromised, certainly. Ferguson RDA 2. I don't hate it. I think there's a lot to win here. I think Ferguson gets a nice name in RDA, a former champion. It's not like he's not fighting a nobody. Also fighting an older guy. RDA, who's actually on a win streak, if I'm not mistaken. I think he could use a little bit of the name value. I don't think he'd be too mad about fighting somebody that's 0-3 in his last 3 performances. I think the Tony Ferguson name value is still there. Yeah, and that can headline a fight night. He's coming off a Paul Felder win, which snapped a 2-fight losing streak at 170. So I like it. Anthony. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm about it. Home Alone. Love your takes, man. Keep up the good work. I appreciate the love, man. Thank you so much. Fucking shit. We're getting dark here with paranormal shit. I don't know if I want to get into it. That's funny. Too bad Dariush isn't Canadian like GSP. Then he would have no longer be considered boring. I don't think that's true. I think towards the end, people kind of not considered, but we knew what we would get into a GSP fight. It was more about watching the technique and the level as opposed to excitement. GSP was not exciting at the end. Granted, that fight with Bisping was exciting. The fight with Condit was exciting, but it was mostly because his opponents made it exciting. If it was up to him, he'd win a clean decision with very little risks. But yes, I fired back a little bit at that. I think we all knew kind of GSP was not boring, but not the most exciting fighter out there for sure. If Conor beats Dustin, do you think he could beat Charles? Would he even go for the belt, or rather another money fight? No, I think he'd go for the belt. At that point, the belt is a money fight. The belt is always a money fight. And unless you're fighting another A side like Floyd Mayweather, it'll be a step down for McGregor pretty much. Maybe the Masvidal could be interesting. Maybe a fight with Nick Diaz. Obviously, the Nate Diaz one is still out there for sure. Maybe that. But no, My feeling is that he goes for the belt. And I think he has a good chance of beating Charles Oliveira. Sure. He cracks hard. And look, Michael Chandler almost put him away. I think Connor's got more power than Chandler. Maybe not in the ground and pound and all that. Maybe not as much volume. But certainly one shots, like when you're just striking, I think Connor's has got a little bit more pop. So yeah, I'd give him a good chance. That'd be an even fight. I think that should be a split fight here. If you ask me, yeah, I mean, that's an even fight. I might consider Charles Oliveira for recency bias a slight favorite, but then again, that's me basing it off Conor McGregor's last performance. I think, if he goes out there and completely just shuts down Dustin Poirier in a way that is telling of his skill set and where he's at, right? So it's not like a 13-second knockout of Jose Aldo or anything like that, but like, he beats his ass for like 4 rounds and then knocks him out. Then you go, oh shit, I might shift opinions there differently and then maybe slightly favor Conor McGregor in a Charles Oliveira fight. But that is a big if. You're saying if Conor beats Dustin. If Conor beats Dustin, I don't know if he's going to get that done. I favored Dustin in the first fight. I was one of the very few ones that did. Look how that turned out. Not to brag here, but I really saw that one coming. And I don't think he's going to do it again. I think Dustin beats him. I think Dustin is in his prime right now. He really is. We thought he was in his prime when he fought for the title. Usually that's when fighters are in their prime, when they reach the pinnacle, which is the belt. But I do think he's gotten better since the Khabib loss. And also it was Khabib, But yeah, that's an interesting one. So anyways, big if there. Big if. Ask me that again after the July 10th fight. James Falcote here with a good question. What does it say for Bellator matchmaking if 90% of their underdogs lose their fights? In other words, are their fights too favorable for their betting favorites? I don't know where you're getting the 90% number there. I don't know if that's accurate, if literally like 90% of the underdogs lose. But I do see a trend that for the most part, if you're an underdog, favorites usually win in Bellator. And I think that's maybe at a lower level. I think once you get to sort of the top of the divisions, that's when we start seeing very competitive fights. One being, for example, Jason Jackson versus Neiman Gracie, right? Like fights that you really got to think it through. Like I picked Gracie for that one. But I told people, I had a few people reach out to me and be like, yo, what do you think about this fight? Because I got a lot of friends that are degenerates and like to bet. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, man. I wouldn't put money on this. Like, I got Gracie. Gracie's great. But, dude, this Jason Jackson, dude, like, he's looking good, man. And, he's collecting names out there. And fair enough, it was a controversial fight. I did think Neiman Gracie won, but it was close. So, yeah. But then you get other cases like, the rise of Michael Page, like, that guy ain't taking an L for a while, right? Because they're going to give him favorable matchup. The same thing with Valerie, and that's fine. That's how you build prospects. Look at AJ McKee. I think in a lot of the fights that he was in early, he was a favorite, and rightfully so, and matched up properly. But then all of a sudden, it gets to a point where they're able to kind of let go of the wheel and be like, all right, you're on your own here. You know what I'm saying? Take out the training wheels, per se. And then all of a sudden, you see AJ McKee, doing what he did to Darian Caldwell and, fighting for a world title and for his next fight against Patricio Pitbull. And so, yeah, I think the Bellator matchmaking they do a better job at grooming prospects. And that's why you might see a lot of their underdogs lose fights, because a lot of those fights are just not really fights to be competitive per se, but to, raise the level of a prospect or, just the journey of a prospect. But it be patient, a challenging fight would come along. I think AJ McKee is the best example of that. You get in some fights that you're supposed to get in, you get in the experience, and then you're off to the deep end. So, yeah, I think, with what you said, James Falcote, I think, yeah, it's pretty safe to say that the Bellator matchmaking is a little bit more appropriate for building prospects. And that's, I think, one of the, look, if I were like a fighter and I were 0-0, I'd sign with Bellator. rather than the UFC all day. They'll give you all the time, all the opportunities needed to succeed if they see potential in you, right? You got to have an initial raw amount of skill and promise, right? You can't just be anybody. But yeah. All right, I'll answer this last one, and I left it at the end just because it's off topic here. But I Booty 48 408 wants to know, can you tell us your paranormal story, please? So I believe I teased this. I talked about it briefly once on the MMA Beat, but didn't go into detail. I just said I had once a paranormal experience, and then another time, maybe on one of these live Q&As. But I've never told a story, so get ready for story time. I'll lean back and everything. It's a long one. I'm just kidding. It's not that long. But all right. So when I was in high school, and I believe in ghosts, by the way. I believe it's possible that can exist, right? I believe that it's possible that stuff like that can exist. And well, there's no proof, sure. But maybe we just don't have the right tools to prove it. For example, radio waves. How can you prove radio waves unless you have the technology to prove that exists, or sonar, right? That's how certain sea creatures communicate, right? If you just jump in the water and you see a dolphin, you wouldn't know it's talking or communicating with anybody. You just see a dolphin because you don't have the tools, right? You have hearing, you have sight, you have certain smell, and that is very limited. You know, like if you didn't have a nose or smell, you wouldn't know that smells exist. You know. So anyways, so all I'm saying is I'm not like a huge like ghost person or whatever. I'm here like, yo, they're real, they're out to get you or something. All I'm saying is that I don't know. But something one time really super weird happened to me in high school. So where I grew up in South Florida for high school, you know, it's like the suburbs, there's not much to do, so you do a lot of dumb shit as a kid because there's just not a lot to do. So where I lived, you know, a suburby area, and then there was an area closer to where I lived that is more rural per se. You know, you get houses that are acres, that have acres of property. You see horses and cows, and you know, people have a lot of space. So anyways, you get you know, it's a little bit more rural, so there's less like infrastructure, there's less street lights, there's less etc. I don't even think there's any street lights actually. As far as you know, you'll see a light post here and there, but as far as street lights, there isn't any. It's just stop signs. So anyways, it's a very rural area, and we had heard that there was an abandoned house that, you know, you can go into. So we're like, yo, let's go check it out at night. I think we were like 17 or 16. So so me and the homies went and checked it out at like maybe like 10:30, 11, maybe like on a random Friday. I don't know. So we pulled up, and it's like there's light posts here and there, so it's not super dark. But then once you're getting to this place, you know, there is a paved road all the way through this rural area. But once you really got closer to the house, it turned into a dirt road, and there was no lights anymore. So it was just sketchy right off the bat. You're like, I don't know how I feel about this. And usually those people, like, again, it's a rural area. It's a little bit more on the wild side. But it was really because the house was abandoned and it was acres. It was really like just not taken care of. So the grass was super long, like just sketchy vibes all the way. So we pull up in 2 cars. I think it was, it might have been like 6 of us. And so we had flashlights and everything. So we pull up to the house. It's a long dirt road that kind of just turns, and you see the house at the end, and then just tall ass grass on the sides. And so we're like, all right, let's go. So long story short, I bitched out as well as 3 other friends. So we're like, dude, hell no. This is creepy vibes, like just the whole thing. Like, we're not going in this house. So my other 3 friends were like, you know, fuck that. We're here. We're going. So they go to the house. We see them start walking towards the house, and we just stayed in the car chilling. A few minutes passed by, and I was sitting in the back, and all of a sudden we hear a big thud, and then the car goes, it was on park. like right on the back window, and like I felt it. We all felt it. The people that were in the car, like the car moved and everything. Like I felt the impact, and immediately, like I never really had any paranormal experience prior to that. So I literally didn't think anything of it. I thought literally they had probably hit in a tree and turned back around and then trying to fucking prank us or something, and then they just like pushed the car or something, or like ran into it to scare us. So my first reaction was like laugh, and then I opened the door and I got out of the car. And I turn around and there's literally nothing behind the car. And then I look up, and at the front of the house, they're already running back, because I can see the flashlights. They had some cell phone lights and flashlights, and I can see them moving. They were running. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? It was just super creepy vibes. And I got back in the car. I'm like, yo, let's get the fuck out of here. So my other friends caught up. They got in the car and we left. Met up at McDonald's, and we're like, yo, what happened? Like, why were you guys running? And they're like, dude, we went into the house. Completely abandoned. There was like needles. You can tell that there was some junkies that been there. Everything was graffitied, just trashed. We went upstairs, and in the second floor, because it's a big mansion, we heard a door shut, and it was like a big thud. So we just ran out. And so we basically heard the same shit, hundreds of feet apart at the same time. And we, till this day, have no explanation for it. And I'm telling you, everybody in that car felt the thud. The car moved. Nobody around. So, I don't know. I mean, there could be sometimes it's seen, well, not really. Maybe in other parts, deer that maybe ran into it and then ran off. I don't know, but I didn't hear any of that. Would have heard some leaves or some shit. I don't know. All I'm saying is I don't know. But that did happen, and that was really creepy. And anybody that's had a paranormal activity or a paranormal experience, there's something more to it that the story that I cannot convey in the story. Like the vibe was just weird, man. The vibe was just really off. So I don't know. Make what you want of that story, but that did happen. So, anyways, with the creepiness now aside, I think I'm gonna end this thing right here. I see a few more questions. Save that for next week. I'll be back 10:30 a.m. Eastern, if not 7:30 p.m., depending on my work schedule. Today I have off at Junkie, so that's why I was able to do this. But if I have to work during the day next week, then I'll just do it at night. So not a big deal. All right. So anyways, I appreciate everybody that tuned in. I appreciate everybody that submitted questions. Thank you so much. Remember, please subscribe to the channel. Give me a thumbs up on this video. It helps me a lot. And share it. Share it on your Twitter, whatever, Facebook, whatever platform you use. I'll retweet you. And yeah, tell your friends about it. That way we can continue growing. All right. Well, I appreciate all the questions. I appreciate all the viewers. And have a good week. Stay away from ghosts and creepy shit on abandoned houses. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.